Polyp works here. So I made a video a while ago as to what I thought Bonnie's position on the crew would be. After some thinking, a very obvious thought came to mind, which kind of has a double entendre from what we've been seeing lately in the whole Kuma flashback that she is currently viewing thanks to the help of the bubble that was left behind for her. Okay, so the interesting thing about our Yonkos now, Monkey D. Luffy, Marshall D. Teach, Buggy the Clown, and Red Hair Shanks, is that of these characters, 3 of them have held the role of apprentice. Shanks and Buggy were apprentices, and Blackbeard, it's at least implied that he was an apprentice, since he was shown in the same light as Buggy and Shanks during the same time. What is so interesting about these 3 is that they have all been apprentices at age 12 before. Buggy was 12 when serving on Roger's ship at one point. Shanks was also 12 when serving on Roger's ship at one point, and Teach was also 12 when serving on Whitebeard's ship. So they've all been 12 and they've all been apprentices. So an apprentice is a position. I still kind of compare that to Chore Boy because it seems to be within the same line, but I digress. Why is that so interesting? Well, Bonnie's real age at this point after the time skip is 12 because she starts her journey at age 10. So 2 years have passed after the time skip went off. Therefore, right now, she would be age 12. So I think if she does join the crew as their 10th member, whereas Jinbei will be the 9th member. So if she does join, I think it is very possible that she will hold the role of apprentice. Now, the role of apprentice does play a bit of a double entendre in this situation because she will be an apprentice on the crew, but an apprentice can also be a synonym with the word follower or apostle, right? So based on the background that she grew up in and Nika being her deity figure as she was raised in a church that most likely centered around worship of Nika, it is very likely that this will make her an apprentice of Nika if she were to be an apprentice on the Straw Hat Pirates crew. So she is like an apprentice of a Yonko, but she's also a follower of Nika. I think that's a funny little loophole way you can say that she's kind of a apprentice like other characters that we met, but she's also like a devout follower of this religious deity in a way, which kind of makes her a nun of Nika, a sister of Nika, which then bounces back to her mother, Guinea, because like I mentioned in a short a little bit ago, when we first see Guinea as an adult within Kuma's church, she is wearing a tank top that says sister. Nuns and religious sisters refer to themselves as sister. So she was literally a sister in a church where Kuma resided as the local priest. So you could say that she was a sister of Nika, a follower, a female follower of Nika. So in this sort of pirate setup like way, Bonnie would also be a follower of Nika while being an apprentice of Luffy because she holds the title of apprentice. And I just thought that was super interesting. Now, with that being said, she would be the 10th member. And from what we know in chapter 1, that could possibly mean she is the last member. Do I think that? Well, my thoughts on the matter have swayed over the years. However, I'm thinking that may not be the case because in chapter 1101, the whole crewmate thing is brought up again in passing a little bit as Luffy is being watched by Kuma as he practices Gum Gum Axe, and he says, "Oh, I'll use this as a finishing move to defend my crewmates if anyone else tries to hurt them," or whatever. Which is very funny that the guy who separates the crew is watching this and hearing him say this, and then he ends up doing it like several months later. I just find that funny. But the point of the matter is that the 10 men statement isn't brought up again here when crewmates are being discussed by Luffy himself. So I think a change of plans has happened over the 2 decades plus course of this manga being in publication. That's what I think. However, on top of that, I'm thinking if there are other characters after Bonnie who do join the crew, there won't be that many. And on top of that, there are going to be characters that we know already who are pretty fleshed out in terms of lore or have a little bit more to go to make them fully complete. For example, I'd say Yamato is kind of in that camp because there's a lot of chemistry there. She does want to go out to sea to be like Odin. She does want to join Luffy's crew. So there's a deep want there. I know a lot of people have said that, oh, she should lead the samurai in the final war, which quite honestly, that's not her place to do that. That would honestly be Momonosuke's place to do that as the Shogun of Wano and as like a Kaido type thing now because he's an adult and he has the same powers as Kaido. So it's just more fitting for him to do that as their Shogun. But, you know, that just makes narrative sense to me. If you have a different opinion, that's fine. But getting back to Bonnie, it would be very, very cool, I think, if she was an apprentice on the Straw Hat crew. Now, does that mean she'll be doing chores or whatever? Probably not. Does that say anything about what her dream may be? It kind of doesn't. We don't know much about that. But like I have mentioned in previous videos, I think after this flashback is over, we'll probably get a big resolve of what Bonnie's character is moving forward. The idea of her going out on her own again just seems preposterous to me because she literally has found the deity that her father worshipped, or at least someone with the powers and visage of the deity that her father worshipped. So it would be kind of weird to have a character who has been stated to be so closely tied to Nika just kind of up and leave. You kind of get what I mean? It doesn't really make narrative sense to me to set all of this up. And there's a lot that has been set up to just sort of abandon it. And then two, it's very interesting that, like I mentioned before, the sort of double entendre of her being a follower of Luffy while also being a follower of Nika and holding the title of apprentice does exist. Now, I know too, this was discussed heavily back in Wano with characters like Momonosuke and Tama. However, the problem with those characters was that Tama was 8 years old. She's a baby. If you're 8, you're a baby. Because even like the youngest recorded age that we have Buggy at is 9 actively as an apprentice. So that's still older than Tom. And then that kind of sort of bounces back to Luffy being denied being on Shanks' ship when he was 8. You kind of see what I mean? So it didn't make sense back then for Tama to join. And then two, unlike Bonnie, you have to sort of create an abundance of narrative conveniences in order for someone like Tama to be useful, because Tama's ability specifically needs another being to work. So you constantly need to add another animal, another kind of beast into the narrative in order for her to control so she can be useful. And to be honest with you, we've kind of had the whole animal helper thing with Chomper for the past 10, 20 years, because as a reindeer who has eaten the human fruit, he is able to communicate with animals. He does it with Karoo. He does it in Alabasta. He does it in Enies Lobby with the 2 King Bull guys, Sodom and Gomorrah. And then we have Jinbei, who can also communicate with fish, summoning them to his aid. So the whole animal helper ability thing has been covered in spades already by other characters in a bit more unique situations that are easier to do than shoving a piece of food in a beast's mouth. With Bonnie, you don't really have that. And then back with Momonosuke, he needs to be the Shogun of Wano. He needs to be the leader. He needs to be sitting in the seat because it is unoccupied at this moment. And I guess based on how Wano is, a man needs to fill the seat. I know Hiyori's right there, but you know, they're very traditional. It makes sense for Momonosuke to be the Shogun. So that's why those two characters were out. Why Bonnie makes sense is because she already has experience at sea. She's 12, and when you're 12, apparently you're kind of like an adult man. I guess, I don't know, you're an adult. So look at that Buggy teaching Shanks. But she is a more capable child character than the likes of Tama or Momonosuke before he grew up. Now, the only weird part about her being an apprentice, I guess she would only be an apprentice in name, because it's almost like her and Luffy have the same kind of experience at sea, especially seeing as how she went out to sea before him. However, he's done more dangerous things in his entire career. So I guess based on the wealth of experiences he has had along his journey so far, he does have the authority to be over Bonnie as a pirate, even though that still feels weird. But it makes sense because he escaped the Impel Down, he challenged the world government, he was at the War of the Best, etc., etc., etc. So it's narratively feasible for this relationship to occur and for her to be sort of under Luffy in the pecking order. Another interesting thing that I noticed recently is that in terms of bounty, she does fit in quite nicely with the rest of the crew, because the crew, as they've scaled up throughout the series, they've kind of got to ridiculous numbers now, and they are a Yonko crew. The Straw Hat Pirates are a Yonko crew. So amongst the lower bounties, you have characters like Nami, who is 366 million, which the crazy thing about her being that high is that she is higher than Bonnie, because Bonnie is only 320 million, which is like weird to think about. But yeah, so she doesn't really step on anybody's toes at this moment. She kind of reminds me of like Brooke when he joined, because he was only 33 million back then, and he kind of was appropriately scaled for the bounties that we were seeing at the time, and especially from the bounties that were on the crew at the time. Because if I recall, Frankie, for example, was higher than him. He was at 44 million. So yeah, she does fit in terms of bounty as well. But with that being said, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching.